Local tour operators are looking to offer new experiences in order to sustain growth this year. Inbound tourism figures picked up in 2024, gaining 12% from 2023. But growth has yet to trickle down to tour operators. Nashira Rahim tells us more.
Inbound tourism in 2024 did slightly better than 2023, but it has yet to return to the highs of pre-pandemic years. The year of recovery was also not felt evenly across the tourism sector, with some local operators being left behind.
We have seen a growth of between 10 to 20%, which is encouraging. We did expect that it would be more, but the growth wasn't as fast as we expected. That's what I would say. So I'm hoping, I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. Like, hopefully this will mean that it's going to be more sustainable, even moving into 2025.
Mr. Koh's hopes are pinned on the newly renovated Chinatown Heritage Centre. This shophouse is filled with dioramas of how residents lived in pre-independent Singapore. The centre was closed indefinitely due to COVID, but its doors are set to reopen later this month. For tour operators, they see an opportunity to use this space to diversify events with Singapore Tourism Board.
This new space is part of Singapore Tourism Board's move to get more people down to Chinatown. It's new places like this where visitors can interact with the exhibit and learn about key businesses in the area. In fact, these firms are still here today. It's a chance for tourists to come learn about Singapore's past and present at the same time.
Another local operator is shifting its focus to getting more schools and corporates on its programs. That's as it braces for impact of geopolitical uncertainties and travel woes. It's hoping that new offerings beyond the beaten path could draw in a wider base.
The last kampung of Singapore, the kampung Lorong Bangkok, so it has reached out beyond just the locals, but now even like tourists and expats are starting to be keen to learn, what was Singapore before all the high rises, right? So that was actually one of the increasing demand tour as well.
Let's Go Tour is also experimenting with theatrical tours to attract more tourists this year.
With Singapore enjoying growth in inbound tourism, budget hotels and backpacker hostels are looking to capitalize on this mini boom. While some operators say occupancy rates have gone up by as much as 20%, they're looking to offer unique local experiences to stay competitive against more established hotel chains. Nadine Yum finds out more.
Marhaba is over here.
A home away from home is how Beetlebox Hostel describes itself. This 53-bed hostel in Joo Chiat has had an average occupancy rate of 70% over the past 2 decades, until pop star Taylor Swift came to town.
During Taylor Swift's concert, throughout the whole week, we were fully booked. I guess when COVID ended and the world went back to what's normal, people did some revenge tourism, and it has been very stable for us since.
At this capsule hotel in the heart of Chinatown, there were months when it was struggling to stay afloat amid a lack of guests and stiff competition from many similar accommodation in that area. But when the stars from the entertainment and sporting world hit these shores, its revenue jumped 5%.
I would say probably like Coldplay and Taylor Swift will greatly impact us. Other than that, F1 will also be an event that will impact us, like brought our sales up, but other than that, it's still quite the same.
These operators understand that mega events like these will not happen very often. What they want is a sustainable way to grow their business, not just relying on attracting budget-conscious travellers. Both are working on curating and providing more uniquely local experiences for its guests, such as free walking food tours and in-house parties. They are also collaborating with nearby businesses to include them in their itinerary.
I see Joo Chiat Katong as the cultural hub of Singapore. You can find the influences of all the mixed races that we have, namely the Peranakan, which set their roots here. So there's the Peranakan mansion just down the street from us, Koon Seng Road, which is the most photographed street in Singapore. I am actually working on collaborating with some of these business owners, yes.
He says guests will get a more intimate experience, learning about the history and culture of Singapore from such curated programs than they may have from staying elsewhere.
Oh, let's continue this conversation with a tourism expert. Dr. Nisha Abu Bakar is Principal Consultant at Trinhique Consultancy. Thanks for joining us this evening, Dr.
Thank you very much.
I think a recurring theme is everyone trying to find a sustainable source of revenue in the tourism sector. Before we get to that, if you have an update, this idea, and not just in tourism, in everything, finding our pre-pandemic high, do you have an update on figures that suggest where we are on recovery that pre-pandemic high?
Sure. So when you look at Singapore in 2024, I think we did pretty well considering that we are the recovery phase. We hit 16 million in terms of tourism arrivals compared to 2019's 19 million. However, the tourism spending in terms of receipts actually went higher. So Singapore did, I would say, pretty well. I'll come back to why we did well. However, if you look at the international tourism arrivals, up to Jan to September, 3/4 of last year, we hit 98% of the pre-pandemic level. And if you take into consideration the last quarter, I think we hit the pre-pandemic level already. And Asia Pacific, though 85%, I think that's very promising. If you look at the Middle East, it went higher than the pre-pandemic level, plus 29%, right? So I would say that tourism, international tourism has done really well in some regions like the Middle East and the Middle East particularly doing really, really well. Asia Pacific, very promising. Singapore, I would say that pre-pandemic level, by the end of 2025, if we go at what we are doing at this moment, we will hit the pre-pandemic level, maybe even more positive.
Okay, but given that, say, the Middle East, for example, they are getting more travelers anyway, it is not even good enough to hit our pre-pandemic high. So what my colleagues, they're reporting on the various ways in which, for example, a budget hotel might want to compete with a more established hotel chain, not just when Taylor Swift comes, which cannot be often, but on a regular, sustainable level. Do you see various sectors within our tourism industry making the most of our strengths, and I'll need detail here, to make the best of where we are, to make sure that we have enough in terms of revenue to keep going, even in leaner times when we do not have megastars visiting Singapore?
Sure. So if you look at it nationally first, Singapore Tourism Board, I think we are doing things in a very strategic manner. So we have done really good brand positioning. For example, we brought in sports and music tourism, which is trending in the world, and Taylor Swift, for example. We brought in the revenue, we brought in a really strong branding and positioning for Singapore. We did really well on the sustainability front. In fact, Singapore was one of the best countries recognized for our sustainability efforts, which is very important.
Which you mean environmentally sustainable?
Not just environmentally. So we got the GSTC-D, which is Global Sustainable Tourism Council's destination status. And we are leading the Asia Pacific.
So that's sustainable in environment plus what else?
Social as well as economically speaking. Our event sector, for example, is way ahead of many tourism destinations with respect to positioning ourselves as a sustainable tourism MICE destination as well. So certain policies we are doing really well. In terms of tourism products offering, what we are also doing is looking at high value tourism. So we are bringing in hotels, for example, like we are bringing in the Singapore Edition, which is a hotel chain. We have invested in the Banyan Tree Mandai, for example, and that's where nature-based tourism is also trending, right?
But okay, just on this point alone, say nature-based tourism, I see this everywhere. Up to a point, travel is a bit of a zero-sum game. So whatever tourists travel here will not be traveling to Indonesia or Japan or Thailand, as an example. So your win necessarily is my loss. What are we doing that other countries that are very good in this front are not also doing and possibly doing better on?
Right. So maybe I'll take the question the other way around. What is it that the best performers are doing that it's being they are placed as the leading destination. For example, Japan is the best performer in the whole of Asia Pacific. TripAdvisor ranked it as the most trending destination, for instance. It is ranked as number 3 in terms of travel and tourism development. So what is it that country is doing in terms of very favorable tourism policies like visa facilitation at the top generating regions? Number 1 billion, the first billion China, second billion India, and the third billion the halal tourism market. So Japan is very careful with respect to its tourism policies. Japan is also looking at its tourism spending in the right areas. For example, Japan has spent money on ensuring that there is a good product offering in the urban part of Japan as well as in the rural parts of Japan, where there is a trend at the moment, what we call detour destinations, where travelers are not going to Tokyo and Osaka and so forth. They're going away to the peripheral and regional areas of Japan. So the government, for example, I give you one, is that what Japan has done is invested in 32 of its national parks in terms of high luxury resorts. And I think that was a brilliant strategy because Japan knows that more and more travelers are moving into national parks. They're moving into the peripheral and regional areas, especially in the post-pandemic. We are moving towards the peripheral areas.
All right, I'm afraid time is short, so I'll have to grab you on this last question, Dr. Nisha. Now, you also founder of World Women Tourism. Cultural differences might suggest that for certain groups of people, women-only travel might be especially enticing. Is that something that Singapore can look into as a significant source of revenue?
Right. So women-only tours is trending across the world, not just in Singapore, but 65% of the travelers, 60 to 65% of the travelers are women. So girlfriend getaways, women solo travelers through women groups. And Singapore is positioned favorably for this market. Security is number 1. Easy commuting, connectivity, things to do like gastronomy in terms of wellness that we are focusing at the moment. So we've got in position product offerings and a favorable tourism climate that is going to facilitate women travelers to come in if we do the proper branding and marketing.
All right, so back to branding. That's a key theme here. Thanks so much for coming in this evening, Dr. Nisha Abu Bakar from Trinhique Consultancy.